If you're familiar with Chinese medical theory, you know that we talk about 5 yin organs and then the associated emotions. So there's an element and there's an emotion and there's stuff like that. So the heart, for example, the heart doesn't just mean that pumping muscle. It actually means more. It's the pumping muscle. It's also the meridian that's connected to that. It's also connected to what we think of as spirit. The Chinese word is shen. The Japanese word is shin. And spirit can also mean mind. So the concept of heart is much bigger in Oriental medicine than just the organ, just that pump in the middle of your chest. But the pump is the heart. The heart is considered fire, the primary fire organ. And its emotion that goes with it is joy. Next is the spleen meridian and the organ that goes with it. And the element is earth, and the emotional state is called, sometimes you see it listed as pensiveness. What an odd term, but pensiveness. Metal is related to the lungs, and the emotion that goes with that is grief. And then you have water, which is related to the kidneys, and water has the emotion of fear, and then there's wood, which is related to the liver, and the emotion that goes with that is anger. Now, if you think about that for a minute, I listed 5 emotions, but only one of them sounds like it's any good, right? Joy. So if you see that, you think to yourself, oh, I'm just going to live in the heart place because I just want the joy. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be grieving. I don't want to be whatever pensive is. I definitely don't want to be afraid. But what you have to understand is that it's a little more complicated than that. So let me break it down for you in a way that will be more helpful. What you can do is you can say that whatever that thing is, it has 2 characteristics. So I find it useful to describe 2 emotions, not 1. So let's go to the heart. Joy, happiness. The other side of that is anxiety, anxiousness. Now, anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if you're going to have surgery and you're feeling anxious about that I think is an entirely appropriate emotion. But if we talk about it from a standpoint of dysfunction, dysfunctional fire energy manifests as chronic anxiety. Functional energy, fire energy, manifests itself as joy and joyous living. All right? Now let's go to that one called pensiveness, but that's not very helpful. So instead, I'm going to use 2 different words. The functional version is groundedness. Okay? If you're living in that earth element, that earth emotional state, there's that feeling of groundedness. Groundedness is not a high feeling. It's not like, wow, I feel great. But groundedness is like when you walk out of your house and it's a beautiful sunny morning, sun is just starting to come up, and it's a little bit cool because it's fall, and you've got, your favorite mug of whatever your favorite brew is in your hand. In this case, it's a flowery orange pico tea. That's groundedness. You're in the moment of going, I just feel at peace. I feel present. Groundedness. Dysfunctional, depression. By the way, there are times feeling depressed is the right feeling to have. If things have gone really badly for you, if things are falling apart around you and you feel depressed, that's appropriate. I'm talking about the dysfunctional emotion, what we might call chronic depression. It's a dysfunction of earth in that Chinese medical approach. Grief, the metal emotion. Again, grief, nobody wants to feel grief. But let's be honest, if somebody you love dies, you feel grief. Grief is a real and appropriate response to loss. But grief is also the source of compassion and empathy. Do you understand this? That if you experience loss in your own life, it gives you the capacity to have empathy and compassion for others when they experience loss themselves. And even if you haven't experienced loss, but if you have the ability to have compassion and empathy for someone else in their loss, you're expressing the healthy version of the emotion of lung, of metal energy. We say grief, but we really mean something more along those lines, empathy and compassion. In fact, if I'm the one who's grieving, I'm really showing empathy for myself. Now, the dysfunctional version of that would be chronic grief, what we say, getting stuck in your grief. A person who grieves but can never seem to figure out how to keep living their life after that. That's the dysfunctional version of metal energy. Water, fear. That seems odd when you think about it, because water is connected to the kidney. This is actually considered the source energy. The kidneys are, that's where in Chinese medicine is called yuan-qi, the ancestral energy comes from. So this is literally considered the source point. Kidneys are where it all starts. So starts with fear? That doesn't make sense. So let me unpack that one a little bit too. Obviously you can see fear. I mean, when people are afraid, they sometimes pee their pants because you're scared, and that just releases that water energy just like that. And certainly chronic fear, by the way, if somebody's shooting at you, if you're in a war zone and somebody's shooting at you and you pee your pants, that's an entirely appropriate response. It really is. Here's what is problematic. If you're in a war zone and you pee your pants and you freeze, and you can't do anything, and you just stand there frozen while you get killed, that's a problem. Likewise, if a person lives in chronic fear and they're not being shot at, but they hide in their house and they're afraid to go out, that's dysfunction. That's a dysfunction of that kidney energy. But healthy fear, appropriate fear, what is that about? Appropriate fear, the appropriate function of water is initially to make sure that you don't do something really stupid. People who don't have enough water energy do dumb things. They're risk takers and they do things that can get them killed because they're not in touch with that water energy in them, and they're not in touch with that natural appropriate caution and fear. But more importantly, ultimately, the flip side of fear, the other way to talk about it, is reverence. See, when we talk about water energy, we're actually talking about the thing that's most characteristic of yin. Fire is the most yang element. Water is the most yin element. And spirituality, which is based predominantly on reverence for something greater than yourself, spirituality derives from water. Liver, anger, is a problem in a lot of people's lives, especially the lives of men in modern culture, because men are told often not to express any other feelings. So men isn't allowed to be afraid, because if he shows fear, he's considered a coward. Men are not allowed to cry, to show grief, because they're considered unmanly if they do. Men are allowed to be happy or to be angry. That's kind of it. Men are allowed to be happy or angry. And so a lot of men express a lot of anger because it's the only emotion allowed to them, and it can be very destructive and very damaging. And the thing about anger in its dysfunctional form, it's what I call the self-justifying emotion. If you get mad at somebody, you almost can't help yourself. You say, "You made me mad." Like you've got that kind of power over my emotions. And then you do something to them, maybe you strike them, and you say, "I only hit you because you made me mad. You're the one who made me do this," which means a complete loss of self. I try to justify my actions by saying, "Well, you did it, you made me angry," but the truth is, it just means I lost control. And I don't know about you, but I actually don't think that is very manly. I think loss of control is not a very manly action. So anger is problematic, but here is the way anger, healthy anger, manifests. Healthy anger is determination. That's what it is. What we say about anger is that anger is an indicator that something has to change. A friend of mine who's a psychologist put it that way. Anger is a message that something has to change. It's the determination, the energy to make that change happen. So we can talk about the 5 elements now differently. Instead of having a set that goes, joy and anger and grief and pensiveness and fear, I can actually put them all in the positive. I can say the positive versions: joy, groundedness, empathy, reverence, determination. These are the functional emotions of the 5 yin organs. When these yin organs are messed up for some reason, then we see the negative versions: anxiety, depression, chronic grief, debilitating fear, outbursts of uncontrolled rage. Think of it that way. It will help you understand this concept a lot better, and it may actually give you some interesting ideas of how to apply these principles in your martial arts practice. I'm Chris Thomas. These are some reflections from the master class. Thanks for watching. Now, go train.